This repeater is, it's got a lot of history. It goes back to about 1975. It was started in a garage
You doing good?
at the corner of East Main Street and Westview Drive
Right.
in eastern Wallingford. That was where Tom Cullen, K1WXK, lived. And he built this thing out of a VHF engineering transmitter.
Is that Tom up there? Is that Tom up there on the street?
Yeah, that's Tom. Sorry about that. That's my grandson. Tom, let's see, he cobbled together a repeater with a VHF engineering transmitter. That was a company selling kits of VHF, UHF receivers, transmitters. So he used one of their transmitters and a Spectrum receiver. He set it up on 147.03. And it was very interesting because Tom's older brother was a motorcycle guy, and the motorcycle was about 10 feet away from the repeater. And when he would rev the motorcycle, it would vibrate the repeater, so you could actually, as if you had a microphone in the garage, you could hear the motorcycle. Very interesting. Shortly after Tom started, a few people came along to help with equipment and money, and fortunately one of those guys is still here, Eric Olson, KA1JL. At that time, WA1CCR. And there was also Al Paz, WA1WVA, Doug Brown, WA1YHL. And the four of them sort of got this repeater going. It eventually moved to Schoolhouse Road, which is right in here. That's the main drag that we turn off of to come in here. And it was at Schoolhouse Road, almost exactly across the street from where Cheshire Road comes off of that. That piece of property where it comes off of Schoolhouse Road, that's town, what's the word I want?
Open spaces.
Open space, yeah. Anyway, across from that is a house, and a ham that was a member of the club, Paul Boardman, WA1YAX, lived in that house, and he said, well, you can bring it over and put it in the chicken coop. And he had a huge chicken coop, and we put it out there, and we put a 100-watt light bulb inside of the wooden cabinet to keep the repeater warm. And shortly after we went for an official call sign, at that time the FCC was giving out call signs for repeaters. And our call sign was W1NRG. And if we were to go in the backyard of that house, there's probably a block of cement in the ground that has WR1AKG on it. We started to collect money and put up a Roan 25 tower right outside the chicken coops, and we were really on our way. We had a 4-bay collinear antenna. In 1977, we moved from there just up the street to here. Out in the garage, there's a closet, and the town let us move into that closet and put our tower up against the building here, right where the tower that's there now. We put up our Roan 25. We got into this firehouse, I think, largely because of Ernie Frattini. He was always our ally, and he would do things subtly, somehow within the politics of the town, And suddenly the town would say, oh yeah, you can move to the firehouse, no problem. And I have to give all of that credit to Ernie.
Don't forget Steve Hackey.
Yeah, I didn't know Steve, you did. So.
Yeah, he was the assistant fire chief, and he was on our site too. As a matter of fact, when we put the tower up, we had to put the bracket at the peak of the roof, and he got on the radio and says, get me ladder 1 up here. He brought the fire department ladder up here, climbed the ladder, bolted in the bracket, and that's the beginning of the tower.
Yeah.
So it was good.
It must have cost the town $5 million.
Didn't Steve have a call sign too?
W1PXA.
Oh, yeah, Steve was
He just
very
passed away last year.
He just
Oh,
died
yeah.
last year.
Yeah, son of a gun. Okay.
Yeah.
Me and Mike took down his tower in his house last fall.
It's quite a station.
Yeah, had a lot of stuff.
At the time, in 1979, we moved into this firehouse, we were still on 14703. And Tom just decided that that was the frequency to go on. He had no coordination or anything.
Just like now.
Almost. And it turned out there was a repeater on Long Island that could hear us every once in a while. So we've been blessed to have some good friends. In 1979, Jerry Molliver, K1TGX from Cheshire, had a coordination for 14736. And he wasn't going to actually use it. Initially, he thought he would put a repeater up, but then he decided he wasn't going to use it, and he said, would you guys like it? And Eric applied to the coordinating body. At that time, the coordinating body was the Tri-State Amateur Radio Club or something like that out of New Jersey. And they were coordinating repeaters for all of New England, New York, and New Jersey. A tough task, if you ask me. So they were very easy to deal with because, you're so far away here in Wallingford. And when we asked for the coordination, they said, okay, fine. So they transferred the 14736 to us, and the repeater went on the air in 79 on 36. In 2000, we built a new repeater, which is actually the one we're using right now. In 2001, we moved to the water tower. The reason for the move was the town suddenly discovered how wonderful this tower was. And they wanted to put their stuff on the tower. And they thought the town owned the tower, and they said, no, we own that tower. So they said, okay, take it down, and we're going to put in our own. And that's basically what happened. So our good friend Ernie Frattini again went to work and got us into the water tower. At that time, in 2001, Sprint wanted a piece of that water tower and was offering big money to the town to move into that water tower. And Ernie had worked it so that the Sprint guys would help put our antennas up on top of the water tower. So it was a win-win situation to move to the water tower. They did the work, and all we had to do was move in our cabinet into the base of the water tower. Let's see.
What's the height of that? Water tower?
I'll get to that when I show you pictures of it. I've got the stuff on that slide. In 2009, the town wanted insurance on our repeater, basically liability, so it wouldn't burn down the water tower, or the case may be. So they wanted insurance, and obviously that would have been a tremendous expense for us. So in 2009, we merged with the Meriden Amateur Radio Club and let their equipment insurance cover our repeater. So that was how we got around that wrinkle. In 2012, we put in a RM 50M power supply, a 50 amp. We were using a 35, and that was not enough. I mean, even though the amplifier was only running 17 amps, it was just too much constant use for a 35 to stand it. So we went to a 50 amp supply. It's a nice supply. It's rack mount with power supply meters on it. The repeater currently has a board of directors of 5 people, myself, John K1VDF, Dan W1DMM, Rich WA1TRY, and our treasurer is K1LHL Mike. Okay, let me, John, do you have anything you want to add at this point?
No, not so far. I'm surprised you got all those dates.
Yeah,
Quite a span of stuff.
yeah. There's a ton of pieces of paper. You know how that is. You go through all these pieces of paper, and I came up with all of these dates. Okay, let me.
Looks like we're gonna have to. Looks like we're gonna have to get a replacement for Dan if he's still on there.
Ashler Village, and there's apartment 102. This is Mohawk Drive, and we thought it might be this house. We thought it might be here, and then of course it identified itself, and we found out where it was. To give you an idea what we're looking at here, this is the Wilbur Cross. This is the Sunoco station here. This is the Central Fire Headquarters, and here's the entrance into Masonic. And if we go up, I believe this is West Ridge Road. That's where this complex number 10 is. And that was where the interference was coming from a couple of weeks ago.
Hey, Bill,
Yeah,
I drew that circle based on the beam coordinates that everybody had. We had 5 beam headers for different people.
Yeah.
John, and Steve, and another John, LRP. And just on the beam coordinates from the stations a mile or more away, we were able to narrow it down to that area.
yeah. It seemed that about 5 guys had come up with that it was in that complex. So we were just about to go knocking on doors when it identified itself, and it went away.
How long was it keyed up for?
Oh, about 4 days.
Well, let's go further recordings too. And Bob got a hold of the security.
Yeah, Bob GYZ, do you want to tell it?
Yeah, we all got close, but since there was no exterior antenna, it was difficult to find. And the former police lieutenant who was working in the administration department there, I happened to just bump into him. We go back many, many years. And I told him why I was there, and he said, "I'll help you find it." And he took it upon himself to find a way to do it without knocking on a lot of doors. And he used the maintenance people that go into those houses there and do work. And he asked them, "Do you know anybody that's got a two-way radio?" And he says, "I know." And it turned out that the fellow there he was born in 1929, so the Nixon War, 86. And he told the lieutenant that he had some people there that took away a lot of his equipment and left him the 2-meter rig, which happened to be, the microphone was in a key position because of the way it was positioned on his desk. And that's...
Oh, I thought it was him, okay.
You know, I guess we can't get any more info right here. We're just on that curve. And if I were to expand this, you can you can see the water tower that we're in.
Ah, there you go.
Things a million gallons.
It's actually a donut. The staircase goes up the center of the donut of water.
But we don't.
This is from across the street in the baseball fields. And let me, now I can tell you all that info. The top of the tank is 135 feet above ground, and ground is at 360 feet above sea level. The top of the antenna is at 175 feet above ground, which works out to be 535 feet above sea level. Now this diving bell is the way Sprint wanted to get out of the top of that tower. So they installed that onto the tower. And it actually has a door that opens like a closet door. And they, after climbing up the ladder, they can open the door and step out onto the top of the water tower. This is this Sprint antenna system, and this is our antenna here. It's just a little over 20 feet tall. It's a cell wave 220, I believe. Yeah, that's.
PD 220.
I'm sorry?
PD 220.
Yeah.
Okay, you're right.
It's a collinear antenna. Inside of it's all sections of coax stacked on top of each other, and the whole thing is encapsulated in a fiberglass radio.
They used to call it the station master?
Yeah, it was at one time a station master. It's in the family.
We manufactured that antenna.
That's a cell wave.
So,
Used to be Phelps Scott.
It's actually a superstation master.
Yeah, well, the one we purchased it from Cell Wave, so.
There's a lot of business companies that'll be mentioned tonight.
Okay, move on to the next slide. This is inside the water tower. The front door has been removed off the repeater cabinet. The cabinet has casters on it, so it does roll around fairly easily. These are the duplexes. There's 2 on transmit and 2 on receive. This is the repeater itself. The receiver, transmitter, power supply, and controller are all in this chassis. This is a Aztec 30 amp power supply to power a TPL amplifier. This is old knowledge. We now have a new amplifier from Crescend, which is quite a nice amp.
Is that the old power supply or no?
That power supply is also gone.
Yeah. So,
What brand is the controller and receiver?
This is a computer automation technology, a CAT 1000 controller is in this repeater. Okay, let me be sure I've got the right. Okay, over here to the right is the battery case. It's about the size of a car battery. It's a deep discharge marine type battery. And it is under a trickle charge from the repeater. If power gets interrupted, a relay switches the battery in. And theoretically, at that point, you don't have your amp on anymore, just the raw exciter. And theoretically, it should run for a weekday.
With about 5 watts or something?
10 watts, actually.
Does Sprint have emergency power there too?
yeah, they do.
Yeah, I believe they do. Also, I think the town has a socket and a transfer switch on this water tower, so they intend on powering the water tower. The nice thing about being in this water tower is that it's heated to 50 degrees at all times. Well, in the summertime it gets a little warmer.
You can see how old this picture is, I could actually walk.
This is the front door. Obviously, we've taken it off the cabinet. We asked the water guys to attach a piece of copper to this water pipe, and so they took one of those big bolts out that you see, and they put that, it's about a 4-inch square piece of copper up against the pipe. They scraped the pipe down to bare metal and put that copper plate there. And this wire here is a number 6 wire, and it grounds the repeater to this pipe. When that pipe goes through that wall, it then turns 90 degrees straight down into the earth and delivers to the town of Wallingford. So that's our grounding system, the water system for the town of Wallingford. Okay, we're at,
And this is when it goes out too, it also attaches to the outside of the tower, the water tank.
yeah, this is all steel wall, so that's all connected to that pipe too.
It's funny, when you're in there, you don't really even get the impression you're in a tank. It's like you're in a room. Of course, it's set up that way anyways, but.
This is the repeater in my basement. We have to put the new amplifier in. This is the new amp here. It's from Crescend, and we've owned that for, let's see if I have that. In 2007 was when we bought that.
How heavy is that, Bill?
What, the amp,
The whole thing?
the cabinet?
Yeah, everything, with everything in it, you
Well,
work
it
there.
would take a lot of sweat to lift it and carry it around. But we did.
Nice power output is the
The amplifier is 100 watts. The basic repeater is 10. So driving that Crescend to 100 watts.
So we're listening to 100 watts.
Yeah, except that it's losing something. It goes by hardline from the repeater all the way up to the antenna on the roof. And I don't know, what did you figure we were losing there, John?
About a dB and a half, I think.
So about 85 watts gets to the antenna, something like that. The antenna then
That's pretty insignificant.
also gain in the antenna.
Yeah, 5.6.
Also at that time, the reason it was in my basement was we had to send the receiver back to the manufacturer because it was making some noise of its own. It was oscillating. Only suck out the frequency that the other can is on, they also amplify the frequency that they're trying to pass. So when you
Pass it, they don't amplify
right, it passes and then attenuates quickly, but has a suck out on the other frequency. So the total effect of receive to transmit is 80 dB. So it's a tremendous amount of attenuation between the input and the transmit frequency. And also, to me, I'm just flabbergasted by the black magic. The antenna can hear a very weak signal while it's transmitting 100 watts. To me, that just boggles my mind.
You gonna teach us how to turn a duplexer tonight?
Oh, I don't think so.
So is that hardline coax?
it.
No, that's RG214, which is double shielded 213.
So,
Yes.
One
So
of the
it's
biggest
like,
problems we have to make sure is that we don't get any portion of RF from transmitting to receive. The thing will sit there and spit like a son of a gun if you get RF into the receiver. So you have to have all these like double shielded coax and hardline coax and duplexers. And its total purpose is to keep the transmit out of the receiver. Besides getting the RF to the antenna.
and this is why in the early days, when we were in the chicken coop, we were getting a lot of transmitter into the receiver, And Tom then called the repeater Rosemary's Baby. And there are people, and there's a solder lug. 2 meters and odd multiples of 2 meters would get through, if that's true. I don't know. So far, we've been pretty lucky. Input of the repeater. Here's audio level and squelch on the repeater. Power to the repeater, although if it's got its battery connected, you could throw this switch and it would still stay active. This is a inhibit switch so that the transmitter does not go on the air. This meter is an S meter or a deviation meter. We can actually measure deviation, or the exciter relative output. This is a power supply, 7 amps full scale on this particular meter here. Okay, let me see if I've got everything here.
Given the environment that it works in, it works a pretty long time without any issues. It's not the cleanest thing in the
Now
world.
you notice that this is a different repeater, and indeed it is. This is the very first repeater that we built, and we've programmed the ID on this thing to say WRA auxiliary repeater. And if we ever need to do some repairs on the current repeater, we take it out and put this one in. It'll do everything that the other one will do, except it doesn't have a clock. But this one is made with a Spectrum transmitter, and it has the capability of running 30 watts, so it doesn't actually need to have a linear amp after it. The receiver on this is a GE Master Pro, and that's what was in police cars, I guess, 20 years ago? And the receiver is really very nicely made. I must say, it has copper boxes for every section, so that it was very...
You got a spare set of cans too, or the?
We bought their transmitter and receiver. This is the transmitter here, the receiver. This is an Aztec 10 amp power supply, linear supply. Telephone line input to the controller. And of course, when auto patch was king, that was very important.
Bill, is that crystal control?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, the crystal is baked. There's a small heating chamber to keep the crystal at a constant temperature all the time. Not quite.
Needs a few more zeros to be a stand.
Okay, here we go. This is the underside of the current repeater. This is an ADC 188, I believe.
Yes.
You know those?
Very well. That's like about 25 years old.
Yeah, that's, at the time, that was state of the art.
Yeah.
So what this, this entire big board here is the controller, and it keeps time. It, let's see. ADC 188, I said that right. It keeps time, audio mixing, the phone in and out. We have a small DVR board that you can see there. And we have a tone board also to transmit the tone. There's a mic amplifier.
That does the time announcement.
Yeah.
Yes.
Almost everything on the jazzy side comes out of that.
There's a small relay here that switches from 110 AC to 12 volts, switching the battery into the controller. And that is, let's see, number 13, all right. Okay, now here's This is our receiver. At the time, in 2007, it was having some oscillations and we were wondering where that noise was coming from. It would bring up the repeater. There it is after it's been repaired. Now, I can tell that this coil and this coil are brand new. I'll go back. See, they were here and here before. These round cans are helical resonators, which are basically filters. So each section in the IF strip has a filter. Supposedly that's the latest and greatest. However, the receiver had some oscillations which they offered to fix for free. So thank goodness that happened.
Did they tell you what they did to it?
Yes.
What did they do?
You know, they changed some coils and they didn't get into too much detail, but apparently they'd had many complaints about it. And I have to say, from that day forward, we've never heard a fart come out of the repeater.
That's the receiver.
Yeah,
And just out of curiosity, what did the receiver and what did the transmitter cost when you bought the home?
oh gosh, one thing I don't know.
They're about $200 a piece.
There you go.
Pretty cheap.
Yeah, it is, not too bad. The most expensive thing is the duplex, that was like.
Actually, that amplifier also, the Crescendo amplifier, was about $1,500. This was for me, so that I'd know how to hook the thing back up when it came back.
Yeah. So altogether, you've got about probably what, $2,000 wound up into the repeater.
Yeah, probably a little more than that. Here's the copper bus. This is a 1/4 inch thick piece of copper, and you can see how big the bolts are that we're using to tie parts into the ground. And that's where that piece of coax comes up and gets bolted there too.
Tony, I think the cabinet came out of George Street. It was a P10 cabinet. Jeez. Somebody ripped it off from the phone company.
There's another picture of that copper plate. And you can see it here. This is looking in through the back door. Over here we have obviously 110 volt outlets, which are filtered by this large AC filter here.
Again, trying to keep the noise to a minimum.
This is antique. I'm sorry, it's not antique. This is the Crescendo amplifier over here. We're looking at the side of the cabinet to an RM35 power supply, 35 amp.
That's the old one.
The old one. This is a relay which is controlled by a twisted pair from the controller. And we could get, if we got the relay to drop out, then there'd be no power to the amplifier and we would just run in low power. So we would do that from time to time for test purposes.
What do you mean twisted pair to the relay? What do you mean by that? You mean
To the
remotely-
controller,
Remotely,
yeah.
remotely control the relay
Yeah,
through the phone line?
through the phone line, yeah.
Oh, you had a leased line?
The same one that we were using for AutoPads.
Oh, for auto pay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Today we don't have it. Right?
okay.
There's a good picture of the Crescendo amplifier. Everything's in this small box here, which is about 6 inches square by an inch thick. But this huge heatsink runs the entire 19 inches of the rack. This fan makes some noise, I must say. And it comes on every time the amplifier comes on. So I have to attribute that to the reason that the amplifier has been in place for 10 years and has run 100 watts without, why am I telling you that?
The fan's bearings are gonna break next.
Got a little bit of loss on those adapters there, don't you?
Probably so.
And the PL259.
Yep. But you know, when you're up at 100 watts and you lose 10 watts, it's not too bad.
Better than building an engine.
Okay, and let's see. Looking in from the back of the repeater, here again, this is a filter for the AC line. This is another filter that we use. We ran the phone line through this also, so that any lightning or what have you on the phone line would be shorted to ground, hopefully.
Is the phone line still hooked up, Bill?
Yeah, it has to be. We have to have control. According to the FCC, we have to have something more than just its input frequency to control it. So we use the telephone line. Okay.
You couldn't use touch tones to control the repeater?
Yeah,
I mean, through the input to the receiver?
yeah.
Instead of the phone line?
Oh, I see. what you-
Radio controls.
Yeah, we can.
You could do
In
that.
fact, we do that, and because it's more convenient.
Right,
But we have to have the phone line control because of the FCC. They require that.
Oh, so they don't recognize radio controls for the repeater?
Not on its input.
It has to be a phone line.
If you had a 450 link, you
If you had another link receiver,
Okay.
then you're
That's
okay.
Okay.
They want something other than the input to
Right.
the repeater.
Right.
Here's a question, Bill. Is it legal to control it through a cell phone? Because the cell phone is there and have a cell phone receiver there rather than a regular telephone line?
Gosh, how would you do that? I don't know how you would put up a cell phone receiver.
Well, just, like have to have a cell phone hooked up to where the phone line would be coming in.
You're still gonna have to pay for the cell phone service up at the site anyway, so it's probably be about the same price for the phone line. and
Well,
cell
fortunately, the phone line is a Wallingford phone line. Okay.
phone. So you could turn on the phone patch if you wanted to then, since you have a phone line.
Yes.
But you gotta.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we could use the phone
But
patch,
it's shut off.
but it's shut off. Yeah. Yeah. In order to get in the tower, I have to make basically an appointment with the one of the guys at the water department. And we used to sprinkle each other with holy water before we dared touch the
Yep.
own that. And that's it.
So, question on the, how you set up the PL tones? So is
Okay.
that done in the controller?
Yeah, the first was a couple of weeks ago that
Yeah.
signal was holding the repeater up, and after 3 minutes it goes off the air. Now to reset that timer, the input to the repeater needs to hear 3/4 of a second of silence. No RF on the input to the repeater for 3/4 of a second. Other repeaters put a beep there after the 3/4 of a second. We just tell you, just wait before you match the mic. If you don't, then obviously the 3-minute timer is still going. And eventually you time out.
Has it only been 3 minutes?
Yeah.
Or extended for W1NRG?
Yeah, the champion of timing out the repeater.
By the way, I don't know where it came from, but someone says if you time out the repeater, you owe everybody listening a beer.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know where that came from, but it's,
Who has the tape spill?
yes. Okay, when you're finished with the repeater, it hangs for about 6 seconds before the carrier drops.
And if you want to release it to reset the timers, don't hold it up. I know the KD1AV repeater, you gotta hold the key down for 12 seconds to get all those different repeaters to come up. Ours is only 3/4 of a second, so.
Yeah, 12 seconds, but it's a lot.
And it's actually bad for the repeater, because the more you hold up the amplifier, the more it burns up. So it's-
Well, I think it's tough usage on the amplifier to have it go off the air and
Yeah.
then instantly come back on again, and then go off the air, and then come on again. With new people who first come to the repeater, this is what they do. They figure they have to let it drop in order for it to reset. But the answer is 3/4 of a second, it resets. The CWID happens every 6 minutes when the repeater's in use. If it's not in use, you don't hear the CWID. The voice synthesizer is what you hear at that time. And the voice synthesizer will not speak if there's an input in the repeater. If the repeater is hearing a signal, the voice synthesizer will not speak. And that's just because you're both at the same volume and you don't want the synthesized voice to be covering up your transmission.
Some repeaters don't do that.
Pardon?
Some repeaters don't do that.
Oh, they just let it talk over you?
Oh, yeah.
KB180.
Yeah, and the one in Prospect.
You can't talk over the voice synthesizer. It just shuts right up. Start every 6 minutes. It's probably a good idea when you hear the CWID to identify yourself, because you got to do it in 10 minutes anyway. So 6 minutes is a nice reminder.
These controllers are all similar, but they're not exactly the same.
We have a couple of features that you can use. Keypad test, although so if I sent 5 test, 1, 2, 3.
Skip ahead a little here.
But since we're not
And like where you had a radio that had one.
okay, if you need the repeater to make a call,
The barking dog.
silver plated can with a rod that's silver plated that you saw the knobs on the top, we can adjust the length of that rod into the silver plated can. And what it looks like is a very, very sharp filter.
Over it goes, until a taxi cab company from Stanford was on the same frequency. We weren't supposed to be using those, but it worked.
Okay. We're gonna end that there and continue on. Hopefully I can get the rest of my PowerPoint back. Can everyone see the slide?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so Bill, rest in peace, did a pretty good job covering every bit of that repeater.
Now we just see black, Joe.
Oh. Working on it. See that?
Got
Yep.
Same thing though, Rob. When I go to full screen, I lose it. Any idea again?
Yeah, you're gonna have to alt tab, so you're only looking at your screen. You're not looking at the Zoom. This is an alternate screen.
Got it?
Black,
Black?
black.
Black.
Do the same thing you did last time you got it working, Joe.
How about that?
Still black.
Now stop sharing. When you start sharing, make sure you select only your slideshow. Don't select your screen. Select your slideshow, and then alt tab until you've got only your slideshow up.
W1NRG Repeater Etiquette is S.A.M.
John, would you please stay muted?
Okay. Can you see that?
Got that.
Okay. All right. Good. So what's a repeater, as Bill talked about?
Yeah,
It's
we
a,
see your face there. We don't see your show.
oh, God. Hold on.
Stop sharing.
Okay, I should not be sharing.
You're sharing. Okay. So when you go to share, select only your slideshow. Of all the screens that you have up there, select your slideshow and then share sound, optimize for video clip, and then share. Now we see your slideshow.
All right, we'll try this route. Well, if you can see that, we'll go this route, set it to full screen. Okay, so you can see this here. What's a repeater?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what's a repeater? As Bill said, it's a receiver and transmitter and controller hooked together that allows it to repeat whatever it hears. So as you talk, it goes into the controller and into the transmitter, keys up the transmitter and repeats it. So our repeater receives a signal on 147.96, and you should all know that because you have your radios programmed for that, and it retransmits what it hears on 147.36. And you can see that frequency is very close on VHF, and that's why they need those duplexers to filter out that 147.36 that's being transmitted at 100 watts into the same antenna. Now, our frequency pair is not unique to us in the country. There's one in Massachusetts, there's one in New York. So what we did a few years ago is turned on and I'm going to call that the CTCSS, continuous tone coded squelch circuit. Other manufacturers, you may hear people say PL, which stands for private line. That's Motorola's proprietary name for it. QC was RCA's name for it, and Channel Guard was General Electric's name on their radios for the same thing. And our tone is 162.2. That's a for the most part, subaudible tone. And it's a little waveform. If you looked at it on an oscilloscope, it's being sent out along with your RF carrier to open up the squelch on the receiver. And the repeater transmits that same tone and opens up your receiver. And that eliminates you hearing anyone else on the frequency. New York, Massachusetts. If you were to hear skip, it would prevent that. That antenna, Bill said 130 something feet. I'm more of the opinion it's like 503 feet when I look at it on Google Earth and measure the height of the tower and then the antenna, but give or take a few feet. That's where we are, 500, over 500 feet, which is an excellent, excellent location. The top of that water tank makes an excellent ground plane and takeoff for that signal to be sent out. And of course, the repeater, as Bill talked about, IDs both CW and voice synthesizer with a call sign W1NRG. So the equipment up there, as you saw, is a receiver and transmitter interconnected with a controller. A duplexer, which allows the receiver and transmitter to use one antenna at the same time. The controller, which I believe was a CAT 1000, controls things like the repeater hang time. That's when you finish talking and you hear the squelch tail, that's hang time. The coded squelch tone, the time, which Mike K1LHO sets every month. The ID, both CW and voice, and a few other things. It also would connect the phone line up into the repeater. Antenna cable, which I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, John, I think it's 1/2-inch heliax. Could be bigger. It's not RG58 and it's not LMR or whatever else you want to call it. This is solid cable, solid copper jacket, solid, or it could be hollow copper on the inside with a heavy rubber coating on the outside. The antenna, which I call a station master, which was later called whatever it was, the cell wave antenna, and the battery backup. My pictures aren't as good as Bill's, but this again is the controller, the main controls on the repeater. The CAT 1000 controller. Lower left here is our backup repeater, which is held at the firehouse in a go box to be brought to the repeater site or somewhere else if we needed to run it in case something happened to the main controller, main repeater. Our repeater antenna, the cellular antennas have been removed within the past year. So this bottom array is no longer there. It's just our antenna on top of the diving bell. And this is a picture from the top of the water tank looking south. This is Sleeping Giant Mountain for you familiar with the area. You can see all the way to Long Island Sound from the top of that tank. Now, all this equipment, which we've been using successfully for all these years, is soon to be replaced with the new W1NRG repeater, which has just come in. This is going to be a Yaesu DR2X XE repeater, both analog and Yaesu Fusion, which is also known as C4 FM digital mode. It can do both those modes at the same time. And it's pretty fancy at the top. It's software programmable. It has 3 power outputs, 50, 20, and 10. We're going to install it and let it run by itself at 50 watts to see how that runs without running it into the amplifier first. If we notice it's a big change in our transmitter coverage, then we may look at turning the power down on it and running it back into that amplifier. We haven't determined that yet. Some of the other things it does is have switch battery backup power, front panel mic, has a built-in speaker, and we can integrate it into the existing controller if we had to, but this has a controller built in. So the receiver, the transmitter, the controller, and the PA is all built into this one rack-mounted unit. Okay, that's it on the equipment. We'll hold the questions to the end on that. We're going to go over some repeater etiquette now. So everyday use. If there's new people on here that haven't talked on the repeater yet, and you haven't been listening, this is some very easy couple lines of how to work the repeater. So if you want to just give your call out, overcome your mic shyness, and see if anyone will come back to you, you would say N1LES listening 36. 36 is, of course, the last 2 digits of the frequency. And if someone wanted to come back to you or is listening, they would say, I'm going to use Eric's call, KB1JL. He would say, N1LES, this is KB1JL. And I would reply, KB1JL, N1LES, hi, Eric, etc. That's how to start a conversation. If you are conversing with somebody, per FCC regulations, you need to identify every 10 minutes and when signing off. You'll hear some people say, they'll give the call and say N1LES for ID purposes. You don't need to say for ID purposes. We all know why you're identifying. When the conversation is done, I would say KB1JL, this is N1LES 73, Eric. And that's how the conversation starts, talks, and ends. Don't be what we call a kerchunker, where you just key up the repeater for the sake of keying it up and seeing if you can hit it. You really shouldn't do that. You should say, this is N1LES for a radio check, or is anyone listening for a signal report? Just don't key the repeater up. Now, if I wanted to call Eric on a direct call and not just call anybody, I would say KB1JL and N1LES calling. If he was listening, he would say KB1JL, or he would say N1LES, this is KB1JL, and answer me. If I call and I don't get a response, then I would say nothing heard, N1LES clear. Sometimes someone else will come back to you after you say you're clear, just have a conversation, and you respond to them like I did on the first slide. Now we have repeater nets. That is not just a general conversation. That is a net. And the reason for a net is in time of emergency, there are emergency nets usually. And our nets are good practice for when it does hit the fan, or if we ever had to have a net, whether it be skywarn, a hurricane, whatever the emergency is. So if any of you have never heard the net, it's run by a net control operator. He or she does a preamble or a script in call up. A script is just like a movie script. They'll say and read off the script. Some people can memorize it. What the net is, what they expect from you. So for a general net, the control operator will ask usually for call sign, name, and sometimes your location. You respond by keying your mic and saying, here is. Then you unkey your mic and wait approximately 2 seconds to make sure there's not more than one person talking and you're not doubling with someone. And then if it's clear, you give your call sign, name, and location. After a few people have called into the net, a control operator will say, we have, or I have, and list everyone that's called in. He or she may do this call up several times. Finally, the net control operator calls people one at a time for information, chat, etc. So they may say, okay, N1LES, good morning. Do you have anything to add to the net? Could be about weather, could be about what they had for breakfast. If you listen to some of our nets, all kinds of items are talked about. If you cannot stay for the net, you may at the beginning say N1LES in and out. The control operator will acknowledge you as in and out. They will not call you on you later on to say something. This is done sometimes to, you're driving a car, you can't stay around for the net, especially if it's a big check-in. And it also just gives another call sign for the operator to log for their log for that week. And it's also a good test for your radio. Here at the Meriden Amateur Radio Club, Wallingford Amateur Radio Group, we have several 2-meter nets. We have the ever popular Saturday morning 9 a.m. coffee cup net, run by the club president, Ed, W1YSM. We have a Tuesday evening 7 p.m. general chat net. That's usually run by Mike or Sean, sometimes other guest net controls. There will be a new net starting Wednesday, I believe the first week in May at 7 or 7:30 for new and old hams. It's going to be run by Steve Rigel, and it's called Just Push the Button Net. He's promoting this as a net for new hams, mostly to come over Mike's shyness and get involved, to get used to a net. A little bit more about nets. Don't be shy to call in. The net control operator should not criticize you. We all make mistakes. If you miss giving a location or you miss giving your name, they shouldn't criticize you. That's only going to discourage.
I think you're on a different slide there, Joe.
Yeah, I know. I'm just going off topic a second. This will discourage you from probably continuing to check into any nets. So most of the net control operators are pretty patient, and that's how it should be run. Lastly, members of the Meriden Amateur Club and Wallingford Amateur Radio Group make up what's called the Repeater Committee. And current committee members, if I remember right, are Mike K1LHO, myself, Eric, John VDF, Rich WA1TRY still on it. I believe Rob is on it. We're all responsible for the repair, maintain, monitor for interference and misuse of the repeater. Years ago, the repeater was a separate entity from the club. And as you heard in Bill's presentation, it was absorbed into the club back a few years ago. Okay, I know my part went pretty fast. Do we have any questions or comments?
Hey, Joe, Jim N1ZN.
Yes, Jim.
I think you should go over again during the slide what Bill talked about, letting the repeater drop and not letting the repeater drop. People think when somebody finishes talking, they have to wait till they hear the click and the repeater drops, and then they key up. What that does, as Bill mentioned in the presentation, it causes the amplifier to turn on and turn off, turn on and turn off. So as he said, you only have to wait like a second.
Yeah,
2
so
seconds.
Jim just said it. So when you're talking on the repeater and I finish talking, you don't have to wait to hear the repeater drop, which is 6 seconds. Within 3/4 of a second, you can rekey that repeater and the timer resets. People think that you have to let it drop for the timer to reset. You don't have to. 3/4 of a second time after I unkey my radio, you can key up. That resets the timer and less wear and tear on the amplifier.
Joe,
Yes, Mike.
you might want to mention about the other facility we have, EchoLink.
Okay, yeah. So for people that can't reach the repeater over RF, in other words, you're from your shack, from a portable, from your car, we have an EchoLink set up through the Steve KC1 SA at his house. So you could download the Echolink app on your phone or at your house through your computer. Find the W1NRG repeater in the Echolink app and come in through the repeater through that way. And I did that from Florida this winter when I was down there. I can bring it up. There is a slight delay. So when you're listening, there's a delay before you hear the people talking. And when you key up your Echolink on your phone or computer, there is a delay before we hear you up here in Connecticut or wherever you're talking from. So but that is another option to come into the repeater besides RF. Years ago, I heard Bill mention it, before cell phone usage, you used to be able to make phone calls through the W1, at that time KKF repeater. There are tapes around that I wanted to get to play some tonight, but I don't think Mike would allow it. Quite a few of Mike calling home and gave us a few laughs over the years because it was like having a party line. We heard everything that the ham was saying and everything the person he was calling was saying. And it was before cell phones, and it had all the police departments on touch tone. You would hit a code and dial right into a police department or call your house or whatever.
Hey, Joe.
Yes, Eric.
Going back to the repeater keying up, it's always good courtesy to wait a second or two in case somebody else wants to break in or join the conversation. You can key up within 3/4 of a second, but it's good etiquette to not do that, to at least wait 2 seconds. You don't have to wait for the repeater to drop, but to wait a couple of seconds would be good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Eric?
Yeah.
Sorry, not Eric. Joe,
Yes.
the new repeater, is it still going to use those 4 round tubes that are the duplexers? And like
Yes.
once we get the Yazoo up and going, what equipment is going to be at the water tank?
Well, probably everything that is there now, plus the new repeater. However, everything that's there now won't be running. So the new repeater will replace that big silver current transmitter, receiver, controller. That will come out. The amplifier won't be hooked up. It'll be just this repeater going into the duplexer, and out of the duplexer is connected to the antenna. So much less pieces of equipment will do the same thing that everything there is now. Is that clear? We're going to use the same antenna, same cable, same duplexer.
How does a duplexer work? What are those 4 round tanks doing?
Yeah.
Do you know?
It's like black magic. So
how much does it cost?
Thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars.
For the purpose of insurance, can you be closer than that?
I think we came up with that figure somewhere. We had it. I don't know the top of my head. But basically
They were $1,500.
that was back in the day. It's probably much more now.
Yeah, probably much more now.
Yeah,
In fact, those aren't even made anymore.
If we had a lightning strike and lost everything, what's the cost to replace it?
I think Mike gave you that figure. I don't have it in front of me.
Okay.
And please don't even say that. But anyways, there's 4 we call them cans for the duplexer, 2 on the receive side, 2 on the transmitter side.
And there's no little magic box that's 1/10 the size that does the same thing?
No. So 2 of them are tuned to reject 147.36 to prevent that from going into the receiver. The other side, 147.96, is tuned to keep the 147 from that going into the transmitter. They both pass and reject those frequencies. They're swapped. And that's the whole purpose of that. So the transmitter doesn't interfere with the receiver when the transmitter is keyed.
Now,
Um,
we currently have two repeaters, one that's active at the water tower and one in a go box at the firehouse. What are
yeah,
we gonna have a year from now?
same thing. You'll have the fusion, hopefully the fusion repeater in running. And everything at the site now, the current repeater, current controller, current amplifier is still there as a backup. So if something were to happen to that fusion repeater, it'd be a matter of plugging the old repeater in and hooking the antenna up to the amplifier. Or to the duplexer output. I'm sorry. The antenna goes into the duplexer. The repeater goes into the amplifier. The amplifier goes into the duplexer. Duplexer goes to the antenna.
Got it. Thank
The
you.
one at the firehouse will just stay there. I mean, that'll be like a third backup. If we were to, everything is grounded, you would hope that it would never be a lightning strike there because you could lose. Yeah, you could lose everything. If you had to have it, the worst thing can happen is antenna would be damaged, and there's a thing called a polyphaser at the end. They're supposed to protect in a lightning strike the coax cable before it goes into that duplexer, goes to a polyphaser which is connected to ground, and that would blow up. Someone asked me a couple questions here on chat. How often is tobacco repeater taken out and tested? Couldn't tell you, Chuck. Probably never. Sean priced the VHF duplexer $21.50. Yeah, Al, Bill said W1DMM was a director. We know he's an SK. That video was made years ago, obviously, because Bill has been in SK. So that's why that was mentioned. A lot of the people in that video are SKs.
Not me.
Yeah.
Pretty close.
I know.
So the fusion, as Rob said, the new repeater is in. Eric's in Virginia, so when he gets back and we can get some of the committee together, it's all new to all of us. We're gonna get together, program it up, burn it in, let it run for a week before we even put it into service, make sure it's running just how we want it. And of course, the current repeater will be taken out of service a short time while the new one is being installed because they can't both be running at the same time at the same location.
Are you gonna turn C4FM at startup? Or just analog?
The plan, I think, is to turn it on at startup.
Joe,
Yes.
you might want to mention to people to make sure they have their radios programmed for the PL. And that's how, because the repeater has an automatic mode where it automatically detects whether the signal coming in is FM or fusion, and it will respond with the same mode. So if you don't have fusion on your radio, you want your PL enabled so that you don't hear the fusion traffic.
Yeah. So what Bart is talking about, years ago, we didn't have the tone on both sides of the repeater. And most people now should have that tone on their transmit and receive on their portables, mobiles, whatever, the 162.2. If you do not have it programmed on your receive side, on whatever radio you're using, when we fire up this new repeater and someone talks on the digital side, you will hear some funky noise coming through your radio. If you program the tone on your receiver, you will not hear that. It'll be transparent to you. The C4 FM, whatever Fusion, it's Fusion's equivalent to Motorola Moto Turbo or the DMR we know on the ham side. It's Yaesu's version of that. The Yaesu radios have provision in the programming. For instance, if you had the Wally for repeater programmed in your Fusion radio, Yaesu, and you check a box, no matter what anyone talks on, analog or Fusion, you would hear it automatically in your radio, whether it be digital or analog. So for the non-Fusion radio people, you need to have the tone on both sides. Sean, yes, all three, we'll keep all three backup repeater, or two backup repeaters. You can never have enough backup.
Just curious, Joe. Do we currently have the tone on both sides?
On the repeater, yes. You need a tone to open the repeater up, and the repeater transmits a tone.
So my little walkie handy talkie HT is already programmed that way.
Well, I know your transmit side is because we hear you talk through the repeater. You may want to check the programming to make sure you have it on your receive side too.
So I won't be able to use the new repeater if I don't fix that.
No, you will be able to use the new repeater. You can't use Fusion because your Bofang does not have Fusion in it. But if you do not have the PL on your receive side, you will hear the digital audio from the repeater.
You have two choices to program at tone or tone squelch. And you want to program at tone squelch. That's PL on both ends of it. If you just do tone, you're transmitting a tone, but you're receiving anybody on the frequency. It's your preference. It's your choice. That's what you do at the user level.
Now, John, WA1JKR, you had 1 million questions in that video from Bill. So what do you got now?
Can't hear you if you're talking.
Yeah, you're muted, John.
There's the unmute. Okay. Yeah, well, I had all my questions answered from Bill. And how many years ago was that? So I don't really remember that much about it.
I don't know, probably at least 20 years ago.
No, come on. Really?
He said 2000.
Yeah.
2000?
Yeah, that's 24 years, I think.
Now,
oh, that's why I don't remember that.
John, you're a member of the Southington Club. Do you guys have a Fusion repeater up and running?
We did. It was relocated to Bolton. Same frequency, we changed the PL. The PL now is 151.
Okay, and
got pretty good coverage. You probably can pick it up in Wallingford.
let me ask you this. Is there any coverage difference between the Fusion side and the analog side?
Personally, I'm not a big digital fan, and I believe analog will cover further because of the noise factor. With digital, you don't have a problem with noise and static, but it's like if you fall off a cliff or it starts to distort in the audio and you can't understand what they're saying, depending on the type of system you're using. So analog to me will cover further than digital.
Joe, I remember seeing that presentation. I've been in the club since 2016. I remember seeing it at Cook Hill. That wasn't 20 years ago. So what am I remembering?
You came on.
I feel a lot better now. I feel a lot better now.
Yeah, but the repeater was up and running before you came into the club at Cook Hill.
So maybe they were showing the same video back then.
Yeah,
it was not. It was 2016. I remember sitting in the firehouse in Cook Hill.
Yeah, we've seen that before, Ed. But the repeater came on long before that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Doc, I think I remember that video as well, because I think Steve Allen was there, and I think I remember hearing my voice on there, so I'm not sure about that. I don't think it was 20 years ago.
No.
Joe, I have a question.
When we didn't have an activity night, we'd roll out the thing.
Hey, Joe, if somebody is talking on the repeater using Fusion, does that mean you cannot talk on it with analog?
I am pretty sure it will do both at the same time. I'm not 100% sure.
It'll switch to analog.
But I think you can do both at the same time.
No, I don't believe you can do both at the same time.
So what happens with the analog user if Fusion's being used?
I think there's different types of programming on it, and you're probably going to get locked out until the person drops on the whatever mode they're using. Then you can pick it up in the alternate mode.
I'm not sure. Okay, Jim, we'll have to try to find that answer out because it's brand new to us. I haven't seen the software. I haven't seen the anything to do with the repeater yet.
We'll
Yeah,
tell you after
well,
we plug it in.
It's not like it's being used so much that I don't think it's gonna be a problem. Just curious.
Yeah, our repeater is hardly used now. Nothing like it was 20 years ago.
Yeah, there was very few users on the Southington Fusion repeater. I think, matter of fact, I think John DQ used it a lot in the beginning on Fusion, but other than that, it was mostly analog.
Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, did you get your radio working, Joe?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, just one little bit of a pearl of wisdom. I was always, when I first started this, and this is for those people who are newbies listening in, of which there are probably not very many, maybe the dog perhaps, but I was always confused as to whether to give my call or the other call first when I was speaking to someone or trying to break in. And Doug, WA1SF8 said to me, just remember it's, hey, you, it's me. And that actually cleared everything up for me. I knew whose call sign to give first. That little, hey, you, it's me. I remember that all the time. So I just wanted to pass that on if anyone else was confused as to which call to throw out first.
You're only legally required to use your own call to identify your own station. The other is for communications purposes, but the legal requirement is your own call.
Damn your Vulcan logic.
I thought you had to identify the station you were communicating with, otherwise you're broadcasting.
No, not necessarily, not if you're in a round table.
But then you've identified every 10
Yes,
minutes.
you identify with your call. That's your legal requirement to identify your station on the air.
Oh, okay, so that just brought up another point. Good point here. So as first mentioned, yes, you call the other person first. KB1JL, this is N1LES, because they need to know you're calling. But
yeah, exactly.
We didn't talk about when it's more than two people. And I haven't heard more than two people in it other than Annette on our repeater in years. But in any case, say it was myself, Eric, and John B talking. If Eric and I were talking, John would cut in and say, John, what's your call? Sorry.
N1GNV.
Yeah. So you would, in between a pause, he would say N1GNV. And so when Eric and I were done with our next quick conversation, I would say, oh, hi, John, N1GNV, N1LES, come on in. He would join the conversation, and it's just like a round table. John would talk. He'd turn it over to Eric. Eric would turn it over to me. So there's no confusion. And you just do that. And if another person come in, the same thing would happen. And you just go around and around and around. I know the old timers remember that, but anybody new, you probably haven't heard more than one or two people on the repeater. And there were times when there'd be 5 or 6 people, and you just go around in a circle.
Yeah, all you have to worry about is who comes after you. So you would just say, okay, K1RCT, pick it up, John, N1GNV.
Exactly.
And then like a commuter net, you would just be everybody's traveling or whatever. You just remember the person comes after you, and then when a new person there's a new person, the one on the end has to remember who comes after him. That's all.
The problem is if somebody drops out, and then you have to remember who's after the person who dropped out. I was always very confused by that. That's why I like everyone to come back to net control, but that's just me.
That's a net, Ed, but this is not a net.
Yeah, that's right.
Round table discussion.
Yeah, but then you still have to keep track of who's up behind you.
Yeah, well, that's what you got to do.
It's
one of life's little problems.
Yeah. So before I forget, let me just make an announcement. We have a Skywarn program that's set up for June 6th. We've sent out announcements. Kristen has sent them out as well. You need to register with the National Weather Service. It's going to be at the Wallingford Public Library on June 6th. Right now, it's supposed to start at 7. It may need to come a little earlier. We'll talk about that. But to register, it's weather.gov/NYC. weather.gov/NYC. And at the bottom left of that screen is a icon for Skywarn. Click on that and that'll take you to the page to register. So weather.gov/NYC. And we have room for 125 people. They're supposed to put on an on-air online training program. If they do, that will cut into the number of people that are going to be coming. Last year, we had 93 people show up from 46 towns across the state. We'll see what happens this year. So June 6th. Okay, any other things we need to talk about? It's 8:37 and
Well, I don't know, Joe, are you done with your thing? I think that's called a faux pas, but go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, so if there's no other questions, I will turn it back over to our steam ruler.
well, I was going to throw it back to you to see if there was any other questions. I didn't faux any pas. I was just trying to move things along a
Okay.
smidge because I get taken to task whenever I go over, my time. So wanted to be
All right.
sensitive. That's all. Joe,
Last-
thank you. This was incredibly helpful. Any other comments for Joe or notes or messages?
I thought it should have gone back to Brian.
I will do that after Joe comments.
No
haven't
other
forgotten
comments
that
from
either.
me.
Geez, I think we need a net control now. Good
Yeah.
job. Good job.
Well done, Joe. Well
Good
done.
job, Joe. I like it.
Very good.
Thanks,
Enjoyed it.
fellas. Thanks,
I
fellas.
learned something.
Thanks for coming back.
Your pleasure.
But Joe, I'm
Okay,
sure you could have done this from Florida too.
Not with my slow internet.
okay. So Brian, I'll turn it back to you. Anything else you'd like to say, sir?
Yeah, I'm just wondering how long it will be until somebody asks when Joe can do this again.
When could Joe
That's
do
the
this?
beautiful thing about YouTube. They can
Right.
watch it over and over again.
Right, right. Well, we'll have to direct him to it. Joe, I really appreciate you doing this. I think it was overdue. Probably we could probably do this every few years, especially at the rate that we're growing. And there's still things that I'm learning. So and that's a good thing. But thanks so much for agreeing to do it.
You got it. I'll add a couple things to it, and we'll do it again maybe every year or every other year.
I like
And,
that.
Brian, what's next month?
Field day. And then
Okay.
I think after that, we might be looking at having somebody from the Reverse Beacon Network come in to discuss that whole project. And I got to get back to them. There's a couple other people, but trying to do my best not to schedule too far out, just in the off chance that people forget. There's a sweet spot I've come to realize,
Okay. Well, thank you. If that's it, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to K1MTD, Mary Duval. It's nice to see you, Mary. It's been a while since we've had the pleasure of you joining us. So thank you very much for checking in. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome. And
Yeah, I do remember you. So there you go.
my call is messed up on here. It's no longer K1MTD, but I don't know how to change it. I thought I had it changed on here, but I see it's the old one. I'm now WX1W. Whiskey
I see.
X-ray 1 whiskey.
Right click on your picture and select rename.
Right.
Oh, all right. Right click on it. I'll pick it up and see this. Hold on. All right, click on it and do choose and hide. Rename. There I am. And there I go. WX1W.
See what happens when you pay your dues. You get all this great new information.
Oh, this is pretty awesome. I have a weird setup here. And you can probably see it. I also have my cat who likes to get in on here and photobomb and do that. Let's see. So I gotta just get rid of that. I went away. WX1W. WX1W, go. Aha,
Congratulations. There you are.
look at that. You're a genius. Thank you very much. I owe you a cup of coffee.
Well, it's really Bart that gets the coffee. I'll pay the tip. All right,
I-
anything else? Anything else for the net folks? All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I motion.
Seconded.
to adjourn.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Thank you.
Nay.
All right, we are adjourned.